Hey YouTube, happy October to everybody. I can't believe that it's October already. This is my favorite time of the year, and I'm just in shock at how fast time has gone by. So I hope that you guys all have some cool plans for Halloween. You know, if you're staying inside, if you're going to be spending time with family, having like a little personal party with your fam, giving out candy, whatever it may be, please enjoy and stay safe. So, you guys, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my real, true life scary experiences. In this video, I'm going to be as descriptive as possible, giving you guys information as it happened, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start out with my first scary story that happened to me. This was about 3 years ago and it happened in Guyana when I was on a missionary trip out there. So while on the missionary trip, we were going to visit one of the Native American indigenous tribes that live in the jungle. And at the time, I didn't realize that where this tribe lives at is situated along the Amazon River. So to get to where that tribe lived at, we had to kayak down there. So first we had a kayak, and then once we got off the kayaks, we had a mountain bike. So everyone was getting partners. We were assigned to kayaks that held 2 people, and people were really quick with grabbing their partners. And there was one other team member, and you know, he's kind of like the underdog, you know, really nervous, really scared of different things, not really comfortable during the entire trip. So a lot of people didn't want to be his partner. So I figured, all right, like, hey man, like, let's be partners. You know, we can group up together and we'll kayak down the river. And the cool thing was that we were assigned tour guides. So everyone had a tour guide, and the tour guide was able to adjust to your pace. So when I went over to my friend, I look at him and I'm like, hey, have you kayaked before? And he's like, nah, man, this is my first time and I'm really nervous. I'm scared. And I'm like, all right, you'll be good. I kayak all the time and I canoe. So you should go ahead and go in the front, and I'll go ahead and I'll be the power from the back. So basically, I was powering the kayak, making sure that we were able to go forward by the strokes. And then for him, he was steering. One of the things that the tour guide was telling us was just to make sure that we're going at a steady pace because of all the wildlife and animals that are in the rainforest. At this point, I'm like, okay, and I'm thinking about all the movies that I've seen, the things that I've learned about. I know that there's some pretty treacherous creatures that live in the Amazon rainforest. And my friend starts to turn red and get really nervous, and I'm just like, hey man, we'll be good. Like, you know, like he said, just keep going. Don't look down, don't think about it. And he's like, okay, but I could tell that he was nervous. So I'm mentally preparing myself. I don't know how things are about to go with him, you know, what's going to happen, but I'm trying to stay as optimistic as possible. One of the things that was very intimidating about kayaking in the Amazon River is the fact that the river is this beautiful tone of black. And I mean, it's not just dark water, but the water is so dark that it looks like a mirror. So you can see your entire reflection when you look down. Another thing is that you don't know exactly what is swimming in there. So our tour guide is behind us, and I don't know why I asked this question, but I was just curious. And I say, hey, like, what kind of wildlife do you guys have out here? And us being in this kayak right now, like, what kind of things might we see? And the tour guide looks at us and he's like, well, first of all, we have anacondas swimming under us right now. And he was like, if an anaconda got curious enough, it could literally take his head, climb up on the side of the kayak just to see who's here. He's like, it wouldn't eat you because there's too many of us here right now, but he said it would be curious just to see. And he said also you have jaguars. He said if a jaguar is hungry enough, the jaguar can just come up, swim through the water, and swipe the kayak, turn it over. And you could tell he was messing, but he was being honest at the same time. He also talked about different kinds of spiders, deadly mosquitoes, and just all these different things. I mean, the list went on and on. So as he's talking about this, I look at my friend, and on his back, he has this gigantic tarantula on him. Now, I was not going to tell him. You know, like at that moment, I was going to tell him. We were out there. The Amazon River at that point is like 60 to 90 feet deep. And no, just no, I was definitely not going to say anything. So I'm just being cool. I don't even like spiders. I'm looking at this huge thing. We're probably about, I'm right here. He's probably about where, like right back here, in terms of a distance. So like I'll be behind him, but that's how close to where he was in front of me. And I remember going, and eventually we were going at a medium to slow pace. And I guess our tour guide got tired of the pace, and he's like, hey guys, like, I'm just going to go a little bit ahead. I'm not going to be far off, but You know, I just want to make sure that, you know, you guys don't feel nervous. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, no, dude, like, don't leave, stay with us. So he goes ahead and he kayaks in front of us. And essentially at that point, my friend is like, hey, Ronnie, I'm feeling something on my shoulder. Like, he's like, is there something on my back? And I'm like, man, you just got a little bug on your back. And he's like, little bug. And he's like, let me see. He's like, can I turn around? I'm like, no, you're good, man. Like, just keep going. And I didn't want him to turn around and see what was on his back. So he turns around and he starts freaking out. I mean, like literally shaking, and like the kayak is going from side to side. And at that point, I'm thinking, I take, I take my oar and I slap the tarantula off his back. The tarantula flies off into the river, and I'm thinking, I put his hands on his shoulders, and I'm like, yo, it's gone. The tarantula's gone. Like, you're good, you're fine. And he's still slapping himself, panicking, thinking that it's on him. And I tell him, just, we're good. He finally calms down, and I told him, I said, hey man, like, please don't do that again, because if we flip over 90 feet down there, like we have on Life Vest, but still, like, you don't want to be in that river, you know, just swimming, not being in the kayak, because we don't know what's in there. And it's just more dangerous if we're in there in that water versus being in the kayak. So he finally calms down. I let him know that it's gone. I keep an eye out just in general to see if anything else is in the kayak or climbing, but we make it safely to our destination. And when we get there, I was just glad. I took a moment, put my hands together. I'm like, thank you. Like, I'm glad that we made it, because I don't know how that would have went, you know, if we flipped over into the water, or thankfully he didn't get bit or anything. But that's scary experience number one. Scary experience number two, you guys. This happened about last year on a weekend, and it was a day that I was going downtown to DC to run some errands, and I was on the metro. And I figure, like, if I'm ever going to into the city for a long period of time, I always take the metro, because if you're going to be there for a long time, parking is expensive. You don't be paying all that money. So I take the metro down there. I get to the station. I hop in the metro car. I always try and choose a car that has a good amount of people in it. So there's this old lady in the front. I sit in the middle. I figure, let me get a good seat so I can see both directions. I always like to be aware of my surroundings. And I sit in my seat, and I noticed that something about this older lady just seemed a little bit off. You know, like, she was sitting there, but she was rocking back and forth. So I said, okay, let me keep an eye on her. And eventually the train doors close, and this older lady starts to look around. Like, she was like this, just looking around, looking around. But notice that she also kept looking at me, and she was like this, but every time I would look at her, she would look away really fast like that. So I'm like, all right, this is a little bit unusual. Still, I keep an eye on her. I start texting, but I wanted to be aware of my surroundings. So after that, I looked out the window just to observe the scenery. I noticed that this older lady starts to really fan herself, like, rapidly. She had a piece of paper with her, and she was like, and I'm like, that's like a really aggressive way to fan yourself. And I'm just checking her out. I'm like, this lady looks crazy. And one of the things that struck me as well was the fact that it wasn't even hot on that train. It was very cold. You know, they had just turned the heat on, and it was a cold day in the winter. Thinking maybe she has hot flashes. I don't know. So she starts fanning herself, and then she gets up from her seat, and she sits in one of the other seats. I figured, all right, maybe she's hot in that area, so she figures it might be a little bit cooler in this area. But then it started to strike me when she was moving from seat to seat, getting closer and closer to where I was sitting at. So over the course of about 2 minutes, she went from where she was to about 3 seats in front of me. And then at about maybe a minute later, she's at the seat directly across from me. Not only was she sitting in that seat, but she was facing me. So how I'm sitting right now, she was like this and just looking at me. So, like, I will be in this direction, sitting on the opposite side, and she starts to clear her throat, and she's like, and I'm like, at this point, I'm trying not to laugh, because I'm just like, damn, like, this old lady is doing a whole bunch of shit to try and get my attention. So I'm sitting there trying not to bust out laughing, because I'm thinking, like, this is a lot. I see her from my peripheral vision. She's dressed to the nines. She has on a fur hat. She's in a fur coat. Her hands are covered with golden rings. Some of them have diamonds on them. And she has this cane that has like it's like an old wooden cane, but it has a huge ruby on top. And I'm thinking like, this is interesting. So finally I look at her and I'm like, can I help you? Because she's making all these noises. She's sitting right across from me. She's rocking back and forth. She's doing all this stuff. And she takes out the paper that she was fanning herself earlier and she hands it. She tries to hand it to me and she's like, donate, 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 donate. Just saying donate rapidly. Like, didn't even tell me what she wanted me to donate to. Just tell me donate, donate over and over again. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I can't donate today. Like, have a good day. I appreciate you asking me though. And she looks at me just like this, like a blank stare for about a couple of seconds. And then she's like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And blah, 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 blah. Like telling me like, fuck you over and over again, cursing, hissing, like just saying all this stuff. You know, it's just spewing from out of her. And I'm like, you did all of that because I told you I don't want to donate. And in my head, I'm thinking like, this lady is crazy as hell. And you know, like, man. So I told her, I look at her and I just look away. Like, I didn't want to react because I figure she's not all there. Obviously, she's trying to get some money. She's trying to get over. Obviously, you're not poor. I don't know what you want me to donate to, but no, it ain't happening. So I ignore her at that point. She gets the picture. She gets back up, goes back to where she's sitting, still cursing even when she sits down, right? And then I just watched her and I'm like, what the fuck? So she realized I wasn't having it. Like, even by not responding, she could tell like, this, he's not having it. And I watched her again, and eventually I noticed that she wasn't targeting anyone that was older, but she was targeting young people in particular. There were a group of young kids that looked like some tourists that got on the train. She did the exact same thing with them. And one of the things that was a little bit more interesting was the fact that she sat directly beside them. So I'm watching them and I'm trying to get their attention and tell them like, yo, something's up with her, but they were in their own world. So eventually they got it. I got off the train, but that's obviously what she does on the weekends. She tries to haggle with people and tries to get donations. But that's some creepy shit. Like, if you guys, I'm describing it, but if you were there and you actually saw it, woo, man, if only you guys can be some flies in the walls. That was crazy. Scary story number 3 is a story that happened to me in college with a roommate that was a third roommate that was temporary. You know, when I was moving in my dorm, I found out that I was getting an extra roommate because at the time the dorm was over capacity. And what my college used to do was that if they had dorms that you should have been assigned to someone and they weren't able to assign that, they would put that person in another room. So it would be 3 people or 4 people in a room that should have been 2 people. And what they would basically do is that they would put another bed on top of your bed, which would basically make it like a bunk bed, and it would be 4 and 4. But the thing that was crazy was the fact that there were only 2 closets in the room, so that person's clothes were either being shared in your closet or their stuff was on the floor under their bed. I mean, it was a huge mess. Otherwise, I had this third roommate, and the roommate, me and the other roommate got along, but this roommate that was a third roommate really kept to themselves. They didn't want to talk. Even if you said, what's up, they would kind of look at you like this, be like, hey, this is real unusual. So I said, okay, whatever, like, we don't gotta be best friends, but I'll speak to you and I'll acknowledge you. There was one night where I was sleeping. Typically, I would go to bed like around 11 midnight on a regular day, and I just finished looking at my phone for the evening. And you ever get that feeling like where someone's staring at you? I had that feeling, like I just felt eyes on me. So I go ahead and I wake up and I open my eyes up and I turn over, but I didn't want to be obvious with it. So I just turn over to that side of the room where he sleeps at. And I noticed that he wasn't in his bed, like he was standing up. And it's pitch black in the room, no TV's on, no lights are on. And I just see him staring like towards my bunk bed. I was on the top at that point because I didn't want to be on the bottom. So second roommate was on the bottom, I was on the top. And he's just looking up like this. So in my head, I'm thinking like, what the fuck is going on right now? But I'm trying to maintain my peace. And I'm looking at him. And then all of a sudden, like in the dark, you can see his head contorting like side to side, left to right, contorting up, down. And not only that, but you could actually hear the bones cracking. And I'm like, what the fuck? And this happens for about a total of 2 minutes. And then he just stands there. And then after that, he runs in the bathroom. The door shuts. He's in the bathroom for like 45 minutes. Then finally comes out, hops in the bed like nothing ever happened. And I tried to wrap my mind around what had happened, what that was, but I couldn't figure it out. And honestly, I texted my roommate about it and I asked him if he saw that. He was awake at the time. He said he saw the exact same thing. He doesn't know what that was, what that could have been. And at a loss for words, I'm thinking maybe at the time he could have been high, could have been off some drugs. That's the only thing I think of. The second thought is possibly demonic possession. I have no idea. I don't know. But there's some crazy things in this world, you guys. And those are my scary stories for today. Please like and subscribe. Drop your comments down below. And let me know if you have any scary stories of your own. Happy Halloween, everyone. Enjoy. And